Deputy.
Thank you, Ceann Corlin. Taoiseach, the manner in which Irish Water has been established under a cloak of secrecy, I think, has angered many people across the country. The people were not told by anyone in government that the establishment of Irish Water would cost €180 million, 50 million of it in consultancies, a fact that we only learned from the Sean O'Rourke programme last Thursday. And throughout all last year, Taoiseach, Deputy Barry Cowan, myself and deputies from all sides of the House, government backbenches and opposition, have been asking specific questions of Minister Hogan in relation to the costs of establishing Irish Water, the number of consultancies hired, and many other questions as well. But no detailed answers were forthcoming, despite the fact that we now know that all of the information was with Minister Hogan and the relevant departments for well over 12 months, and indeed as far back as Budget December 2012. And it's now clear, Taoiseach, that Minister Hogan did not want to tell the truth to the Dáil about the establishment costs of Irish Water, and that this was a deliberate, premeditated, conscious decision to hide information that he had in his possession from the Dáil, and to make a decision not to give that information to the House when he was asked for that information, and by extension to deny that information to the people of the country and to our citizens. And in short, our Parliament and our citizens have been treated by contempt by the Minister and indeed by the Government. And there were further attempts to make sure that Irish Water was wrapped in a cloud of secrecy. We had the debacle before Christmas where the entire opposition had to walk out because debate was shut down in relation to Irish Water. There was a deliberate decision taken to exclude Irish Water from the parameters of the Freedom of Information Act. And so forth. And ministers have now all last week pretended they didn't know, including Minister Hogan himself on local radio last week, saying he wasn't aware of the details of the cost. We now know, of course, that he was, because it was decided upon as far back as Budget December 2012. But it was decided by the Government and by the Minister Hogan at a time, by the way, when child benefit was cut, when respite care grant was cut,
Deputy.
and all of that happened, and 180 million was decided by the Government. But I want to ask you, Taoiseach, will you confirm that you were aware of the cost of 180 million for Irish Water over a year ago? And will you answer a simple question? Why did Minister Hogan refuse to provide that information for the House over the last 12 months when he was asked very basic and very simple questions in relation to it, and in relation to all aspects of the establishment of Irish Water?
Taoiseach, 3 minutes. Thank you. Thank
Deputy Martin for his question. I take full responsibility on behalf of the Government for the policy decision to shift from 34 individual local authorities to a single utility, with the saving of €1.1 billion over the next 7 years in operating costs, which will be in the interests of the Irish people, Irish business, the Irish taxpayer and our country, in the context of the highest standards and the delivery of an efficient supply of water for consumers and for business. Yes, I was aware of the estimated overall cost of the setting up of Irish Water of €180 million last year. Yes, I was. Now, the point here, Deputy Martin, is that I want to be very clear about this. The situation that has been outlined by you is not as obviously I would say. I want to be very clear about this. This is a public utility in public ownership. Therefore, there is nothing that should be secret about it, and there is nothing that will be secret about it. In that sense, you may smile, in that sense, the question of the Freedom of Information Act was already dealt with by the Minister for Public Expenditure when he spoke on the bill, previously, when, of course, this will be subject to the full rigours of the Freedom of Information, as it should be, because it's about the Irish taxpayer and the Irish people. Secondly, the matter, as I understand it, of a parliamentary question, which was to have been sent to Irish Water, but didn't go, and the Department apparently have apologised for that. In any event, let me be clear about this. Let me be clear about it, Deputy Martin. Irish Water will be subject to the proper responses in this House by the Minister for the Environment to parliamentary questions. Deputies can be quite clear on that. I'd also make the point to you that this is unlike what happened in previous situations, where, you know, personnel walked off with seven-figure golden handshakes, and some never appeared before committees at all. Now, the Chief Executive gave a very detailed presentation for 5 hours at the Committee on the Environment yesterday. He and his officials are in before the Public Accounts Committee, I think at 5:30. And as often as members of this House, through the various committees, want information about Irish water, then they're going to get it. It's their right. It's in the interest of the Irish people and the Irish taxpayer. But let me finish again. Last year we had a situation in Galway where one house, the leakage was over 60,000 litres. We've had people having to boil water notices in various locations around the country for years. You had the consternation in Dublin here with the difficulties at Paula Fuca just before Christmas. We've got to put an end to all of this inconsistency. And when you invest in the creation of a utility like Irish Water, it is for the long-term benefit of the people, of consumers, and of business, that we have high standards in terms of the delivery and the quality of the water for everybody. So, from a transparency perspective, everything here is available to every deputy and therefore to the Irish people, as should be. And that was pointed out, Deputy, when Minister Howland spoke on this. Clearly, Irish Water has been instituted formally since the 1st of January and is subject, of course, to the full rigours of the Freedom of Information.
Thank you.
It took over responsibility on the 1st of January.
You have 1 minute, Deputy.
I mean, Taoiseach is an incredible response, and an absolutely disgraceful response. Absolutely disgraced to come in here and say every bit of information is available to the House. There's the list of questions that have been tabled for the last 12 months about Irish water, and absolutely no detail and absolutely no answers forthcoming from members of this House. The members of the House have been treated with absolute contempt, and you've come in today and added insult to injury by pretending all is well, all is transparent. The only reason we're having this question today, and the only reason that we had people in yesterday, was because Sean O'Rourke asked the question of Mr Tierney, who gave an answer in relation to consultancies. That's the only reason, Taoiseach.
Thank you.
Because you decided, and the Minister decided in particular, that he would not share information that he had in his possession for the last 12 months, and which you have now admitted that you had in your possession for the last 12 months, and you wouldn't either, Taoiseach, share it with anybody. And don't go on with this stuff about savings. The savings will be because people are going to be paying for water. That's the basic major savings that will be occasioned as a consequence of the imposition of charges, Taoiseach. It is a downright disingenuous proposition to put to this House, as you have done today, that somehow information will be available to members when they ask questions, or indeed through freedom of information. When the Act was published, there was a conscious decision to exclude Irish Water from the parameters of that particular Act at the time of its publication, Taoiseach. And I think also, Taoiseach, you need to confirm that the 34 local authorities will continue to provide the service. Will continue to provide the service in relation to water for the next 12 years. And people will be angry,
Deputy, please,
when they will have to pay for this excess,
Deputy, would you please put
through their water charges. And I want you to answer the question that I asked you originally. Why did Minister Hogan decide not to provide specific answers and the actual information that he had in his possession about the establishment costs of Irish Water to Dáil deputies when they asked those questions over the last 12 months? Why did he refuse to provide that basic information that he had in his possession?
Taoiseach.
Well, you asked me a question early on. Was I aware of the set-up costs of Uisce Éireann? And I said I was. 180 million. You accuse me now of not making that public. I answered your question honestly and straight up. Secondly, as Uisce Éireann has taken responsibility for the distribution and the management and the investment in Uisce Éireann for the future, that is now subject to the... You don't want the answer, do you not? You don't want the answer? Okay, thank you. Well, I'll make it a little clearer for you. Please. I'll make it clearer for you again. Uisce Éireann Irish Water will be subject to the full rigours of the Freedom of Information Act. That was from its inception. From its inception last year. Yes, but from its inception last year, Deputy Mayor. Uisce Éireann will be subject to the Freedom of Information Act from the moment it was set up. This is about transparency, about accountability, and about determining and telling the Irish people where the services for which the contracts were awarded in the interests of investment in a situation where we cannot go on as we've been for years. We're spending 1.2 billion every year at the moment in dealing with water. The savings here over 7 years are estimated at 1.1 billion. And in order to create the utility, Deputy Martin, you have to invest money to have it at the level and the highest level that should operate. So you understand this yourself because you've been around the wheel now a few times over the years.
Thanks, Taoiseach.
You said is
We're over time, Taoiseach.
so
sorry.
Freedom of information, parliamentary questions. Minister Hogan is due to speak here on your own party's motion later on this evening, and he'll answer any question in detail that you want to ask.